A church tower, standing alone in the middle of a lake. No village around it, no road leading to it, just water in every direction, and a medieval steeple rising out of it, as if the mountains swallowed everything else and left only this. Beneath that water is a village, streets, houses, farms, the homes of 1,000 people who were told to leave, and then watched their valley fill up behind them. And it is not the only one. All over the world there are towns that were drowned on purpose, flooded for dams and power and progress, while the people who lived in them stood on the hillside and watched. Some are gone forever, but some, when the water falls, come back. These are 5 cities swallowed by water. We begin in the Nevada desert, with a town that is drowned and come back over and over again. St. Thomas was founded in 1865 by Mormon settlers on the banks of the Muddy River. In a valley of dust and rock, they built irrigation channels and turned the desert green. It grew into a real town: farms, stores, a school, a hotel, an ice cream parlor, a stopping point on the long road between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. And then, in the 1930s, America built the Hoover Dam. Behind that dam rose Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, and St. Thomas was inside it. The residents were bought out for very little and told to go. Most dismantled their own homes and carried them away piece by piece. And on the 11th of June, 1938, the last man in town, Hugh Lord, stepped out of his front door into a rowing boat as the water reached his doorstep and rowed away. Some say he set fire to his house before he left. The water closed over the town, and at its deepest, the tallest building in St. Thomas stood 60 feet beneath the surface. But this town refuses to stay buried. Whenever drought drops Lake Mead far enough, St. Thomas rises again. Street grids, foundations, the chimney of the old ice cream parlor standing alone in the cracked mud. Former residents have held reunions in their own drowned town. It surfaced in the 40s, again in the 60s, and since the early 2000s, the drought has held it above water almost continuously. St. Thomas keeps coming back. Our 4th city has never once come up, and it is still down there, perfectly intact. Our 4th city is not a ruin. It is one of the best preserved ancient cities on Earth, and almost nobody has ever seen it, because it lies roughly 40 meters beneath a lake. Xicheng, the Lion City, stood at the foot of the 5-Lion Mountain for more than 1,300 years. It was a walled city with 5 gates, a center of trade and government since the age of emperors. Inside were temples, schools, streets of shops and homes, and 265 stone memorial archways raised over the centuries to honor scholars and officials, with dragons, phoenixes, and lions carved into the stone. Then in 1959, China began the Xin'an River Dam to power a new industrial age. The valley would become a reservoir, and Xicheng was in the middle of it. Around 300,000 people were moved out of the region. The city itself was not demolished. It was simply left standing, and the water was let in. And then something extraordinary happened. Sealed away from wind, rain, and sun, the city stopped decaying. The wooden beams held, the carvings kept their edges. For 4 decades, nobody thought about it, until divers went down in 2001 and found, in the darkness, an entire imperial city standing almost exactly as it had been left, archways intact, lions still snarling out of the stone. A city that would have crumbled to nothing in the open air, perfectly preserved by the very thing that took it. Xicheng is a city the water protected. Our 3rd is one the water gave back. High in the Venezuelan Andes stood a small town called Potosi. Around 1,200 people lived there, in a mountain community built around a tall colonial church whose steeple could be seen from across the valley. In 1985, the valley was dammed for a hydroelectric plant, and the Uribante Reservoir was created. Potosi's people were moved out and scattered. Their homes, their streets, their cemetery, all of it went under. And for the next 25 years, the only thing left of the entire town was the very top of the church, a steeple and a cross, standing above open water with nothing beneath it but a lake. Boats began taking visitors out to it. A cross, floating on a lake, marking a town nobody could reach. Then, from around 2008, Venezuela was hit by a severe drought. The reservoir began to fall, and the church began slowly to rise. By 2010, the water had dropped so far that the entire church stood exposed, and around it, the bones of the town. House foundations, a square, the gravestones of the cemetery. Former residents walked through streets they had not stood in for a quarter of a century. But the church that came back was not the one they remembered. From the front, the facade still looked whole. Doors, windows, the bell opening. From the side, it was hollow. The roof gone, the interior stripped away by 25 years underwater, a perfect face on an empty shell. Our second city never disappeared at all. One piece of it has stood above the water for 70 years. In the far north of Italy, in the Alpine province of South Tyrol, there is a lake with a bell tower standing in it. The image you saw at the start of this video. It is probably the most photographed drowned village on Earth. But the story behind the postcard is a far angrier one. The village was called Curon, or Graun, a German-speaking alpine community that had farmed this high valley for centuries. Its church tower had stood since the 1300s. There were 2 natural lakes nearby, and in the 1940s, an energy company proposed merging them into a single reservoir. The problem was that the valley floor, the fields, the farms, and the village itself was in the way. The villagers fought it. They protested. They petitioned. It is said the case even reached the Pope. It made no difference. In 1950, the valley was flooded. Around 160 homes and 120 farms disappeared beneath the water, along with more than 1,000 acres of farmland. Roughly 1,000 people lost their livelihoods, and the compensation they received was, by every account, close to insulting. Everything was demolished before the water came. Everything except the bell tower, which was protected as a historic monument. And so the lake rose, and covered the fields and the houses and the roads, and stopped just below the top of a 14th century steeple. In 2021, when the lake was drained for maintenance, the village returned for the first time in 70 years. Stone walls, cellars, steps and archways lying bare in the mud while crowds came to walk through them. There is a local legend that on quiet days you can still hear the bells ringing beneath the water. It is only a legend. The bells were removed in 1950. But it tells you what this place still means to the people who lost it. But there is a detail in that legend almost nobody knows. The bells were taken down on the 18th of July, 1950, days before the water came, and they were not destroyed. 2 of them were carried up the hill and hung in the new church of Curon, the village that was rebuilt on the slope directly above the lake. So the bells do still ring, not from beneath the water, but from above it, over the heads of the people who were moved out, and their children, and their grandchildren, who have spent 70 years living on that hillside looking down at the water covering their old home. And not everyone stayed to hear them. Of the families who lost their houses, close to half left the valley altogether. Some for other parts of Italy, others as far as South America and Australia. Curon lost its village and kept its tower. Our final city lost everything, and then, 25 years later, came back from the dead. And so we reach number 1. The only town on this list that drowned, stayed under for a quarter of a century, and then came back out. On the shore of a salt lake in the Argentine Pampas, 600 kilometers from Buenos Aires, there was once a holiday town called Villa Epecuén. It was built in 1921 beside a lake so salty it rivaled the Dead Sea, salty enough that bathers floated without effort, and people believed the water could heal almost anything. They came in their thousands. By the 1970s, this town of about 1,500 residents had some 280 businesses and received tens of thousands of visitors every summer, arriving by train from Buenos Aires. For 60 years, it was one of Argentina's most beloved resorts. Then came the rain. A run of unusually wet years filled the lake higher and higher, until on the 10th of November 1985, a storm drove the water against the embankment protecting the town, and the barrier gave way. It did not arrive as a wave. It came slowly, street by street, over months and then years, while residents came back to watch from the edge of town as the water climbed their houses floor by floor. There was nothing anyone could do. In the end, the lake stood roughly 10 meters deep over Villa Epecuén. For 25 years, that was the end of the story. Then, in the late 2000s, a long dry spell began, and the lake started to fall. And Villa Epecuén came back, not as a ruin softened by time, but as something far stranger. 25 years in saltwater had bleached the entire town bone white. Buildings stood stripped to their skeletons. Trees were dead and crusted in salt, standing like white bones across a gray plain. Rusted cars sat where they had been left. It looked less like a town than a photograph of one, with every color drained out, and people came back to see it. Former residents walked through the salt to find where their hotel had been, their school, their house. Nobody rebuilt. Nobody could. But one man came back for good. His name was Pablo Novak. He had been born in Villa Epecuén in 1930, sold eggs in its streets as a boy, and watched the town grow into the resort the whole country loved. He was 55 when the water came, and he refused to leave the area. And when the lake finally pulled back, he moved into an abandoned house among the ruins and simply stayed, the only inhabitant of a bleached white ghost town, riding a rusting bicycle through streets he had known his entire life, keeping a few cows, and greeting the visitors who came to stare. He would tell them what used to be there: the ice cream parlor, the bar, the dance halls where he had spent his nights. He said that he had seen the town born, and he had seen it die. The district made him its official ambassador. He lived there alone for 15 years, and in January 2024, 3 days short of his 94th birthday, Pablo Novak died in the ruins of the town he was born in. With him gone, Villa Epecuén was formally declared a deserted village. After 103 years, the town was finally, officially, empty. 5 towns, 5 bodies of water, and almost the same story every time. Not a natural disaster, not a war, a decision made somewhere else, by someone else, that a valley was worth more as a reservoir than as a home. The dams were built, the power was generated, and the places underneath became a line in a document. But the water keeps something. Under the lake, the streets are still laid out. The doorways are still doorways. And every so often, when the rain fails and the level drops, a town that was signed away decades ago rises back into the light, just long enough to remind us it was ever there at all. But I want to hear from you. If your town were about to be flooded, and you could go back for 1 hour and save one single thing, what would you take? Tell me down in the comments. I read them. And if you want the story of a place the world sealed away rather than drowned, we've told the full story of Varosha in its own episode. You'll find it on screen now. Next time, another place the world left behind. Stay with us.